Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start by thanking the ministers and senior representatives who joined this discussion today from Switzerland, Jordan, Indonesia, Sierra Leone, the United Kingdom, Japan, Brazil, Colombia, the International Committee of the Red Cross and the UN. And I want to acknowledge also the humanitarian leaders who made time to speak with me earlier today and share their experiences and valuable insights. This evening, ministers have agreed to a formation of a ministerial group for the protection of humanitarian personnel, dedicated to upholding and championing international humanitarian law and driving action to protect aid workers in conflict zones. Regrettably, 2023 was the deadliest year on record for aid workers, more than 280 who were killed. But 2024 is on track to be the worst. This is a deeply alarming trend. It signifies that the rules and norms that are needed for the protection of humanitarian personnel are at risk, and the consequences for current and future conflicts are clear. It also signifies that calls for the compliance with international humanitarian law are not being heard. We have seen over this last year aid workers killed, wounded or kidnapped in conflicts across the world, in Sudan and South Sudan, Democratic Republic of the Congo, in Yemen, in Ukraine and in Gaza. Gaza is the most dangerous place on earth to be an aid worker. We felt this deeply in Australia when the IDF strike against World Central Kitchen vehicles in April killed Australian Zomi Francom and her colleagues. And this was not a one-off incident. More than 300 aid workers have been killed since the start of the conflict in Gaza. We today, collectively, want to ensure that their deaths are not in vain, and we want to ensure that the deaths do not continue. You cannot protect civilians if you don't protect aid workers who are providing civilians with food, water, medicine and all that they need to survive. So the countries, the diverse group of countries that is represented here before you, we have gathered together here today because we share a determination to galvanise international commitment to uphold international law, that law which protects those who dedicate their lives to protecting civilians. So together, we will seize the momentum created by the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 2730, and I acknowledge Switzerland's leadership on that and also that of Brazil. That resolution is seeking to strengthen commitment and action and to reverse current trends. This group of ministers and governments represented have determined to pursue a new declaration on the protection of humanitarian personnel, a declaration which we will prepare and develop over coming months, in which we will seek to demonstrate the unity of the international community's commitment to protect humanitarian personnel and to channel that commitment into action in all current and future conflicts. All countries will be invited to join the declaration. And I thank my colleagues and friends very much for being with us today. Thank you very much. I think I'm now going to hold a press conference with the Australian media, which you're welcome to stay. I suspect you don't want me to.
I need you to do the Australian media.
Oh, you remember that?
Thank you so much.
No. Yeah. Just let people clear, if that's okay. I'm okay. I'm better than I was at about 5 p.m, which was sort of 5 a.m. or something. And how are we all? Yeah, no, there's that period, isn't it, where you... I'm just looking for some notes I scribbled before, which I seem to have not put in here. Here we go. So, before we... G'day, how are you? Before I take questions, can I just do a skip through of what some of the things we've done today? One of the first meeting of which I attended, which I wish to speak to you about, is a high-level meeting in relation to the women in Afghanistan. We are deeply concerned by the Taliban's attempted erasure of women from public life. I heard today, with many others, from brave Afghan women. We expressed Australia's solidarity with the women of Afghanistan, and I made the point in that discussion that there is no peace in Afghanistan without the full participation of Afghan women. And I think those women from Afghanistan and beyond who took the opportunity to share their stories with us, they were really, their courage was deeply inspiring. I also presented Australia's statement to the Summit of the Future. As you know, that is the UN's work on reform of the United Nations so that it is more fit for purpose. We were very involved in the negotiation that has led to that pact, and I was pleased to have the opportunity to speak on behalf of Australia. Finally, the other event I wanted to talk to you about is an event hosted by Prime Minister Kishida of Japan, which really goes to the imperative of seeking to rid the world of nuclear weapons. This is a group called the Friends of a Fissile Material Cut-Off Treaty. That's a lot of words, but essentially what it means is having a treaty which prevents the future production of material necessary for nuclear weapons. It is an essential part of the disarmament and non-proliferation framework. It has been 30 years where the international community has not yet commenced negotiations on such an important treaty. I spoke about the importance of this last year, but was really pleased to be part of this initiative with Japan and others, a group of friends who are seeking to champion a fissile material cut-off treaty, which is ultimately about ensuring that we work towards a world without nuclear weapons. Happy to take questions.
Could I start by asking you about events in Lebanon in the last 24 hours or so? Obviously, we've seen another fairly significant escalation in Israel strikes as well. What's your assessment of the situation there and Israel's actions?
Well, we are like other governments, including those who have been made public statements on this. We are deeply concerned. We're alarmed by the escalation and the loss of civilian life, both in Lebanon and also the attacks into Israel. We have consistently said we wish to see de-escalation. We believe a wider regional conflict is not in the interest of any of the peoples of the region.
Minister, how much confidence do you have that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants de-escalation like the rest of the world?
Well, I can only speak for the Government of Australia and the people of Australia. I'll leave it to others to answer the question you've posed. I speak for Australia, and Australia has a very clear view that a wider regional conflict is not in the interest of the people of the region, just as Australia has a clear view that the cause of peace demands both a ceasefire as well as the release of hostages. It demands the observance of international humanitarian law, as we have been discussing today, and ultimately it demands a two-state solution in accordance with what the UN agreed many, many years ago at the establishment of Israel, which was two states, a Palestinian state and an Israeli state. As I have made clear to my Israeli counterpart, we believe that there will only be security and peace for Israelis as well as Palestinians if the Palestinian aspiration for self-determination and their own state is adhered to.
Do Israel's friends like Australia and the United States need to use more leverage to try and see a de-escalation in the region?
Well, again, I speak for Australia, and we will continue to add our voice both to the calls for de-escalation. We have engaged with countries in the region, not just Israel, but other countries in the region. We have consistently put the view that escalation is in no one's interests.
There have been reports in recent days that senior Biden administration officials have essentially given up hope on getting to a ceasefire before the US election. Can you explain what the Australian government's assessment is of the likelihood of that happening before the end of the year, for instance?
Well, the UN Security Council has unanimously or without opposition adopted a position in relation to ceasefire. That is what the international community seek. We support that call. We need to see a ceasefire. We need to see the release of hostages. We need to see aid delivered. We need to see an end to the humanitarian catastrophe we see in Gaza.
Minister, hundreds dead overnight, apparently, in rapidly ramped up bombing raids by Israel. And you talk of de-escalation. Now, I know you're not pinning a lot of blame in your comments, but how can you avoid pinning some blame on Israel when it's ramping up hostilities like that?
Well, I again repeat what I said earlier, which we are deeply concerned by this escalation and the loss of civilian lives, and we would urge all parties to de-escalate.
How concerned are you for Australians, particularly in Lebanon, and the risk that this continues to spread?
You would have heard me calling for many months now for Australians who are in Lebanon to return home. You would, I hope, have heard me say, and the Prime Minister and other ministers, that we would urge dual nationals, Australian citizens, permanent residents to take commercial options whilst they were still available. Whilst we are doing what we can to prepare contingency arrangements, the numbers of Australians in Lebanon are beyond the capacity of the government to provide assistance to all. There are very large numbers of Australians in Lebanon, which is why we again say to any Australian who is in Lebanon what we've been saying for months, which is you should return home as soon as you are able to, whilst commercial options are still available if they are.
Last question, please.
Can I ask you just a left field one? There's been some criticism in recent days from the opposition back home about the First Nations ambassadors' role and the extent of his travel spending. Can you just talk us through kind of the rationale behind that role and what you make of the opposition's suggestion that the position should be abolished?
Yeah, well, it's disappointing that Mr Dutton doesn't see a role for Indigenous Australians in representing Australia. And we see again his character on display. He divides us at home and frankly he diminishes us in the world. Thank you very much.